Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. On today's video tutorial, guys, we are going to be tackling question 2.2. And question 2.2, guys, is still dealing with your maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world, right? Before you get started with today's video tutorial, guys, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on that notification bell so that you get notified every single time I upload a new video tutorial, guys. And also, don't forget to give this video tutorial a huge thumbs up because that really helps the channel grow and it helps the channel to reach more learners that want to better their mathematics marks. Also, guys, if you really appreciate the content that I am making for you guys on my channel, please don't forget to click on that thanks button. It can also go a real it can also go a long way in keeping the lights on in the channel. So guys, without any further ado, let's get started with today's video tutorial. Right. Right. So like I mentioned in today's video tutorial, guys, we're going to be tackling question 2.2, and it's basically us just analyzing obviously this map that is given to us, right? So the same thing as I did in question 2.1, we're just going to have a look at what is given to us here. Just quickly analyze what we can analyze just so that it makes it easy for us to tackle the questions together, right? So we're obviously given a map, right? And we know that this map is a layout, it's a layout plan, actually. It's a layout plan of Irene, right? It's a layout plan of Irene. We are basically given a compass here on the top right, that basically indicates to us where is our north. So our north in this case is basically on our left. Our east is at the top, the south is on the right, and the west is at the bottom. So this compass, guys, very important. If you've been following with me in the video tutorials that I've been making, you'll notice that it's very important, especially when we have to basically draw a line from a particular place to another place, and we can see that if that line is going in that direction, we just quickly draw that so that you see what I mean. Let's just say, for example, you had to draw a line from Irene Primary School to the hall, right? And then they asked you what is the general direction, right, from Irene Primary School or Irene Pre-Primary to the hall, then you would have to use this compass to give you that general direction. And we see then, because then, right, we see that that distance, that line is going in that direction, that tells us that that is our distance, right? It's southeast, right? So then that tells us that the distance, the general distance from Irene Pre-Primary to the hall is just what? It is southeast. It's always good to just start with southeast, southwest, or northwest, northeast, right? So you start with your north or your south, and then you follow with like your east and then your west. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So we need to take that into consideration when we're obviously giving our general direction, that we need to use our compass. So that is called a compass, right? And then we also given here other places of interest, right? We are told that we are given colonial guest house, right, at number one. So when we see number one on this layout plan, that means that we are at colonial guest house. So let's just quickly look. Where is number one? Where is number one? That is number one there. If you can see it, I can't make it bigger. That is, okay, let me actually make it bigger. Let me try, right? So that is our number one there. So number one, that is our colonial guest house. Colonial guest house. Number two, right? I'm going to bring it, zoom it out again, right? So we are told that number two is Irene Primary Multi-Purpose Sport Field. So where we see a number two on this layout plan, there we go. That is the Irene Primary Multi-Purpose Sport Field. Okay. Then when we see number three, that is the Concentration Camp Memorial. So there, that is a memorial. The Concentration Camp Memorial. When we see number four, we'll see that, okay, that is our Scott's house or Scout house. Okay, where we see number five, that's our number five, that is the St. Martin's Church. Okay, and then where we see a dot, do you see that there's a black dot there? That tells us that is the entrance of the school. Okay, there's another dot here. That is also the entrance of the school. All right, so where we see dots, then we know that is obviously the entrance of the school. And then we are told that that key there is the railway line. So we see we've got a railway line there crossing the Nelma Pierce. That's the street there. Okay, it's crossing that street. Okay. Okay, so I think that is good, and we're good for us to go and answer the questions that are given to us. Okay, let's see. It says Busisiwe lives in Irene. An extra B shows the layout plan of Irene. Some streets end in a cul-de-sac. Okay, that sounds cul-de-sac. Like, okay, I'm already speaking a different language. The arrows on some streets show the traffic flow in one direction. Okay, so we've got arrows here. For example, on King Street, we can see that the arrows there. That basically means this is a one-way street. Okay, you can only go in that direction. You can't go backwards. Okay, so it's a one-way street. That is also a one-way street, so you can only go in that direction. Okay, right? And then we are also told that um some streets end in a cul-de-sac, right? And we are told, yeah, note a cul-de-sac is a street ending in a dead end that is having only one entry. Okay, so we already know what they mean when they used that fancy word, they cul-de-sac. Okay, it says use an extra B and the information above to answer the questions that follow. Question 2.2.1. Write down the place of interest that is situated at the corner of Crane. Okay, write down the place of interest that is situated at the corner of Craig. Do I say Craig? Craig Street and Bruce Street. Okay, so let's have a look. So what is the place of interest that is situated at the corner of Craig, right? So where Craig and Bruce intersect. What is that place of interest? So we see on the corner of Craig and Bruce, we have this place here, place number 4. And place number 4 is Scott House, right? So question 2.2.1, we are gonna write Scott House. Oh, Scout House. Scout House. All right, and question 2.2.2. Give the general direction from Bastion Guest House to the station and the shopping center. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we basically need to identify where Bastion Guest House is, and we also need to identify where the station and the shopping center is. Okay, so from the map, we can see that Bastion Guest House is at the bottom of our map, and we can also see that the station and the shopping center is right here at the top, right? So if you were to basically give a person just general directions from the Bastion guest house, right, to the station and the shopping center, what would be the directions that you would give to that person? Okay, so that is when we are this question basically requires us to basically make use of this compass that is given to us here, right? So the first thing that we basically need to do is we need to basically like draw a line from the Bastion guest house to the station and the shopping center, right? And then just look at the direction of the line. Is the direction of the line going in the southeast direction? Is the line going in the northeast direction? Is the line going in the northwest direction? Or are we going in the southwest direction? So it's very important for us to basically draw the line. It's very important for us to understand, are we going from the station and the shopping center to the Bastion guest house, or are we going from the Bastion guest house to the station and the shopping center? Okay, but let me not revel. Let's just start approaching this question and see how we would basically give the general directions. Okay, so like I mentioned, the first thing that we basically need to do is we need to basically just draw a line, right? We need to draw a line from the Bastion guest house going all the way to the station and the shopping center, and we need to see what direction is that line going so that we can basically determine the general direction we would give that person. Okay, so we wouldn't say that you need to basically go on to Stanley Street and then continue on Stanley Street and then turn right on King Street and then turn left on Pickwood Street, then turn right on Clifford Street, then go up onto your Pioneer Street. No, that is not the direction that you would want to give that person. You would basically want to give, when they talk about just a general direction, they basically mean that if you are basically a bird flying from Bastion Guest House all the way to the station and the shopping center, station and shopping center, what route would you take? Okay, what is the direction that you would take? So that is basically what they want. Okay, so let's just draw that. So I'm gonna draw a line from the Bastion Guest House going all the way to the station and the shopping center. Okay, so that is basically that line there. Okay, and then from this line, what do we notice? Since we're going from Bastion Guest House all the way to the station and the shopping center, right, we can see that we are basically going in the southeast direction. Okay, we're basically moving in the southeast direction because this line is basically facing in the southeast direction. Okay, so if you were to basically give a person the general directions, we would basically say that, okay, you would move southeast. Okay, so let's just write that down. So I basically forgot to show you guys how they'd mark question 2.2.1, right? You would basically get just 2 marks for saying Scout House there. Okay, so I know I said Scout House, it's Scout House, right? Then in question 2.2.2, for your general direction, you would basically get they're basically saying southeast or SE. Okay, so you'd get the 2 marks there. All right. Next question. Question 2.2.3. Name the street that the railway line crosses. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our map, right? And then we are basically going to have a look at where our railway line is. Okay, and we see that our railway line is there according to our key. Okay, and our railway line, since the question is saying what street does our railway line cross, and we see that our railway line actually crosses which street? It crosses the Neil Mapias Street. Okay, so you see that's the street there, right? And then that's the street in our yellow, and that is our railway line in red. So we see then that our railway line is actually crossing which street? Is the Neil Mapias Street. Okay, so we're gonna write that down. All right. And you'll also get just 2 marks for saying that. Okay. Question 2.2.4. Name the give the name of the church found in King Street. Okay. So we're going to go back to our map, all right? And then we're going to basically look for King Street on our map. So when we basically have a look at our map, we'll see that, okay, this is our King Street. I'll highlight it in yellow. So that is our King Street there. Okay, that is King Street. Okay, so this question basically asks us to give the name of the church that is found on King Street. Okay, so we see as we basically move along King Street, the only church that we can see on King Street, right, is that church there, our church number 5, and we can see that church number 5 is actually what? St. Martin's Church. Okay, so we're gonna write that down. Okay, and you'll also just get 2 marks for saying that the name of the church that is found on King Street is St. Martin's Church. All right. Next question. Question 2.2.5 says that Busisiwe gives David the following traveling instructions to meet her. Okay. So the first traveling instruction that Ubusisiwe gave David is that David needs to drive from Irene Primary School, or from Irene Pre-Primary East along Crawford, right? Then he needs to turn left into Queen Street. Then he needs to take the first right into Stanley Street and continue to King Street. Then he needs to turn right into King Street, pass 5 streets, and then turn left, right? Then continue across the first street before the next intersection, Busisiwe, will be waiting for David. All right. So we need to identify the place where Busisiwe will be waiting for David. Okay. Right. So the first instruction that Busisiwe gave David, right, from our question 2.2.5 is that David basically needs to drive from Irene Pre-Primary east along Crawford Street. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to identify where Irene Pre-Primary is, and then we can see that, okay, actually Irene Pre-Primary is here. Okay, and the instruction tells us that we need to drive east along Crawford Street. So we can see from our map that when we're driving east, we need to basically move in that upward direction. So that is our east. Ne? So from the Irene Pre-Primary, we need to basically move east along Crawford. Okay. Then we need to turn left into Queen Street. So if you turn left into Queen Street, right, that is what's going to happen. Okay. So we've turned left into Queen Street. Then we need to take the first right into Stanley Street. So the first right into Stanley Street. Okay. So as you keep turning, you need to literally turn your body so that you know that, okay, now when they say that we need to take the first right into Stanley Street, then our first right into Stanley Street is there. Okay. And we need to continue all the way up until we get to King Street. So that is our King Street. Then we need to turn right into our King Street. So I've turned right into King Street. And then they're saying that we need to pass 5 streets. Okay, so we need to literally pass them, 5 streets. So the first time that we pass is your Stopford Street. That's the first street. Second street that we pass is your Bruce Street. Third street that we pass is your Evans Street. Fourth street that we pass is your Pigwood Street. Fifth street that we pass, because we need to pass it, is Jansen. So once we've passed our fifth street, we are on Pioneer Street, okay? And then we need to turn left. So we basically need to turn left on our Pioneer Street. Then we need to continue across the first street. So we're going to pass the Clearfoot Street. Okay. And then the direction tells us that before the next intersection, so this is the next intersection here. The next intersection is on Main. It tells us that Busisiwe will be waiting for David. So we can see that actually Busisiwe is going to be waiting for David where? At the Irene Library and Hall, or at the hall. Okay, so this is where Ubusisiwe will be waiting for David. Okay, so what was very important here is that once we've basically turned right onto our King Street, okay, the trick is that we need to pass 5 streets. Okay, so we need to pass them. Not that on the fifth street you need to turn left. So you don't turn left on Jansen, but you need to pass Jansen because they're saying 5 streets. So if you're passing 5 streets, you're passing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You pass Jansen and then you turn on Pioneer. So Busisiwe is going to be meeting David at the Irene Library and Hall. Okay, so we're going to write that down. Question 2.2.5. This is the answer. So she is going to be waiting for David at Irene and Hall. All right, so you will get another 2 marks for that. Okay, so just for that answer, you are going to basically get 3 marks, okay, for being able to just follow the directions that Ubusisiwe gave. Okay, let's go to question 2.2.6. It says that the actual straight line distance as the crow flies from the entrance of Irene Pre-Primary to the entrance of Irene Primary School is 1.9 kilometers. Okay, so we told that the actual distance, right, the real distance, right, that a crow will fly from the entrance of the Irene Pre-Primary to the entrance of Irene Primary School is 1.9 kilometers. We need to determine, rounded to the nearest thousand, the scale of the layout plan in the form of 1:something. Okay, so here we're basically determining the number scale, right, of this layout plan. Okay, but before we even get to that, the first thing we basically need to do is we need to identify where the entrance of the Irene pre-primary is. We need to identify the entrance of Irene, where the entrance of Irene Primary School is. We need to measure that distance, right, so that we basically get what our measured distance is. Okay, let me actually do this in the, okay, so this is question 2.2.6. So the first thing we need to do is we basically need to get the measured distance on paper. Okay, and then we need to get, obviously we were given what the actual distance is. Okay, so that's the first step. Get what the measured distance is, write what the actual distance is, determine whether we're working with the same units. If we're not, we need to basically convert our units. Then we are going to take it from there. So how do we do this? Like I mentioned on my previous video tutorial, guys, I said that you need to obviously, in this question, just have your annexure be printed out, because you need to be measuring this distance using obviously your ruler. Okay, so let me just clear this out. Okay, so we want to basically determine the distance from Irene pre-primary, the entrance of Irene pre-primary. Okay, so the entrance of Irene pre-primary is on this dot here. Why am I saying it's there? Because the key there tells us that the entrance is basically denoted by the dot there. Okay, so that is the entrance of Irene pre-primary. We need to also determine where the entrance of Irene Primary School is, and the entrance of Irene Primary School is there, right? So all that we basically need to do, take our ruler, draw a line from Irene pre-primary to, or the entrance of Irene pre-primary to the entrance of Irene Primary School, right? So once you've basically drawn your line, it will look like this. Then now we need to basically take our ruler. Okay, so we take our ruler, that is my ruler, and we are basically going to measure, right, the distance on our paper from the Irene pre-primary to the Irene Primary School. Also, Irene pre-primary is not the same as primary school, so I'm guessing the pre-primary is like a cash. Okay, so it's not the same thing. Okay, so in my case, guys, my scale is going to be a bit off because I'm working on a digital annexure B, but I will tell you approximately what you guys should be getting as you are measuring this distance. Okay, right. So mine is going to be slightly off because, like I mentioned, I am using a digital copy. Okay, but as you're basically measuring this distance, right? And let's say, for example, you are basically working with your physical copy, you should be getting that the distance from the Irene pre-primary to the Irene primary school, it should basically be like 8 centimeters. If you're measuring in centimeters, it should be like 8 centimeters, 8.4 centimeters, right? So that is basically the range that we should be looking at. Okay, but as you can see on my digital copy, the distance that I'm getting is 10 centimeters, but I'm not going to use that distance there because I'm actually doing the memo for the grade 12 mathematical literacy paper 2. So I need to actually use the actual values that are given in the memo. But you guys should understand that you need to actually measure the distance, right? And you need to basically use the distance that you're getting there in your ruler. So you need to be accurate at this point, okay? So if you measure from that point to that point, right? Okay, let's just assume that I'm using the physical paper, and my distance that I got is like 8.4 centimeters. Let's assume that I actually got 8.4 centimeters, right? So I'm going to use this distance to basically help me determine my number scale. Okay, so from there to there, let's just pretend that it's 8.4 centimeters, but you guys can see that I'm getting like 10 centimeters here, but I'm going to use 8.4 centimeters just for the purpose of just following what's written in the memo, and I'm not going to confuse anyone because someone's going to be like, but the memo says. Okay, so that's why I'm going to stick to just writing it as 8.4 centimeters, but you guys do see that on my digital copy. It's giving me 10 centimeters, and it's only giving me 10 centimeters because it is a digital copy at the end of the day. All right, so so there's going to be some type of an error. Okay, so let's assume that then my measured distance is 8.4 centimeters. Okay, so I'm gonna write that down, 8.4 centimeters. And remember, we were told that the actual distance so literally, if you were to walk from Irene pre-primary to Irene primary school, the actual distance will be 1.9 kilometers, right? So we're basically going to write 1.9 kilometers. However, we've got a problem here. When we're working with the number scale, guys, we need to remember that the units, right, need to be the same. Okay, so in this case, we can see that the units are not the same because we can see that here we've got centimeters and kilometers. So we need to now convert those centimeters to kilometers. Okay, so how do we do this? At this point, guys, you should be mastering this. We know that to move from kilometers, it's meters, it's centimeters, it's millimeters, right? So we want to convert the kilometers actually to centimeters, okay? Okay, so if you want to convert from kilometers to centimeters, guys, what do we need to do? We're basically going to take that 1.9 kilometers and you're going to multiply it by 1,000. When we multiply it by 1,000, it's going to put us at meters. So we need to then continue and multiply by 100. And when you multiply by 100, that is going to leave us at centimeters. Okay, so let's just convert that 1.9 kilometers. So like I mentioned, to convert, it'll just be 1.9 kilometers, right? And then you're just going to multiply it by 1,000, right? And when you multiply by 1,000, it just puts us at meters. Then we need to then multiply again by 100, right? And then we'll basically get what 1.9 kilometers is in meters. So if you take 1.9 and you multiply it by 1,000, you multiply it by 100, you'll find that you get 1 million. So it's 1,900,000 centimeters. Okay, so we've basically converted that 1.9 kilometers into centimeters. Okay, so this is just our rough work. So from here, right, we can just then write that the measured distance, right, in centimeters is 8.4 centimeters, and actual distance in centimeters, so 1.9 kilometers in centimeters, is 1,900,000 centimeters. Okay, so since then we've got now this ratio and the units are the same, then we can continue then to divide right through by 8.4. Why are we dividing right through by 8.4? Because we are told that we need to determine, rounded to the nearest thousand, the scale of the layout plan in the form of 1:something. Okay, so that is why I must then divide that 8.4 by 8.4. Okay, because I want it to be in the form of 1:something. So 8.4 centimeters, I'm going to divide by 8.4 centimeters. And what you do on obviously the left hand side, you also need to do on the right hand side. So 1,900,000 divided by 8.4 centimeters, right? We see that the units cancel and it'll be 1:2. If you take that 1,900,000 and you divide it by 8.4 centimeters, you will get a value of 226,190.4. Right, so I just made a silly mistake here, so let's just quickly rectify that. Okay, so it's actually not 1,900,000, but it is actually one. So if you take 1.9 and you multiply it by 1,000 and you multiply it by 100, you actually get 1,900. Okay, so it's actually 4 zeros. Okay, it's 190,000. Okay, so that's basically what you get there. So please just rectify that. Okay, right. So then we're going to continue. If you take that 8.4 centimeters and you divide by 8.4 centimeters, you're still getting 1:2, right? And then you take that 1,9 and then the 4 zeros, 190,000, and you divide it by 8.4, you'll find that you get 22,619 0.0472. Okay, that is basically our answer. But we're not done. The question asked us to basically round off our answer to the nearest thousand. Okay, so remember, guys, when we're obviously rounding off to the nearest hundred, to the nearest thousand, to the nearest 100,000, you always need to basically take note of the place value before the number that they ask you to round off to. Okay, so in this case, they're asking us to basically round off to the nearest thousand. So if we need to round off to the nearest thousand, right, that means that for us to round off to the nearest thousand, we need to focus on the place value of the hundred. Okay, so we've got 22,619. Okay, if you want to round off to the nearest thousand, that means that we want to change that to, right? We want to change the value of the two. Okay, and what will help us determine whether that two needs to be a three or whether it needs to stay as two is this value of the six. Okay, because remember, when you're talking about place value, the nine takes the place value of the ones, the one takes the place value of the tens, and the six takes the place value of the hundreds. Okay, so this six is going to tell us what we need to do to that two. Okay, so because this six is greater than 5, it tells us that when we basically round off the nearest thousand, this 2 needs to turn to a 3. Okay, so then our final answer will be 1 is to 23,000. Okay, and we've basically now rounded off our answer to the nearest thousand. Okay, so how will they mark this question? So here you'll basically get a mark for obviously showing your measured distance, right? And in this case, I'm just going to use the centimeter part to help us just see how they'd mark this. So you'll get 1 mark for showing that your measured distance is like 8.4 centimeters, okay? And then you'll get another mark for basically writing down your ratio. 8.4 centimeters is to 1.9 kilometers, right? You'll get another mark for that. Then you'll get another mark for converting your kilometers to centimeters. So we've converted our kilometers to centimeters here. And then we said that 1.9 kilometers is equal to 190,000. Okay, so that is another mark that you'll get. Then you'll get another mark for obviously simplifying your ratio, right? So that is there. And the final mark for obviously rounding off. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This question is out of 5 marks, and that is basically how they would mark it. All right. And the last question, question 2.2.7, explain why a driver traveling along King Street cannot turn right into Bruce Street. Okay, so let's have a look here. So they're saying that why would a driver that is traveling on if a driver is traveling on King Street, why wouldn't they be able to turn right into Bruce Street? Okay, so if you're traveling on King Street, you need to literally just turn your body right. And then, why would a driver not be able to turn right? So when you're turning right, that's where you'd be going. Okay, so when you're turning right, that's where you'd be going. So why wouldn't your driver be able to turn right into Bruce Street? So a driver wouldn't be able to turn right into Bruce Street because literally we can see that Bruce Street is actually a one-way street. Okay, so if that driver were to turn right onto Bruce Street, they'd literally be turning on like oncoming traffic. Okay, so we're gonna write that down. Okay, so the driver wouldn't be able to turn right onto Bruce Street because it is a one-way street, or you can say that that driver would be going on like or turning onto oncoming traffic. Okay, so if you've basically said one-way street, oncoming cars, you'd get your 2 marks. Okay, and that is basically it for question 2.2.2. Okay, so I hope you basically enjoyed this question. Like I mentioned, question 2.2.1 all the way up to 2.2.4 is just us basically interpreting the information that is given to us on our map, right? And then when we get to question 2.2.5, it gets a bit tricky, right? But it's still just us interpreting information that is given on the map, right? Question 2.2.6 here, we really need to be able to convert from kilometers to centimeters, from kilometers to millimeters, right? So we are converting, and also understanding that we're basically dealing with a number scale, and also understanding that you literally need to measure the distance on your paper, right? From the Irene pre-primary all the way to Irene primary school. And then you need to work with that, right? To basically obviously get the ratio in the form of 1 is to something. And the last question is also still just interpreting the information that is given to us on the map. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video tutorial, guys. I hope that I was able to clarify any misunderstandings that you guys probably had as you guys were going through this past paper. And I'll see you guys on my next video tutorial. In the next video tutorial, guys, we're going to be going through question 3.1.1 or question 3. And in question 3, guys, we're going to be dealing with probability, we're going to be dealing with perimeter, and we're going to be dealing with area, and also we're going to be doing a few conversions. Okay, so please make sure that you guys engage. Please make sure that you've turned on your notification bells, and I'll see you guys on my next upload. That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, guys.